Hey everyone, Joe here with the Idaho Prepper channel, and in today's video, we're going to be talking about preparing for an economic collapse and my philosophy and mindset when it comes to preparedness. Also, we're going to be taking a look at some of the supplies that I've stocked up on to prepare for this event, along with some of the new gear that I've added to this preparedness plan. So stay tuned, this should be a good one. Okay, so I'm not going to get into all of the different reasons why I think our country could easily fall into a financial crisis or an economic collapse. I assume most of you understand the different threats and problems that we face as a country economically with the debt and the out of control spending. I will say this: I look at things happening in one of two ways. Either this country is going to get off its butt and enact some serious austerity measures, in which case the entitleists are not going to get their money, or this country is going to continue on down its path and things will inevitably end up imploding, in which case the entitleists are not going to get their money. And when these people who are relying on these payments to get their food and their water and all their sustenance don't get their money, they're going to become desperate and they're going to become violent and they're going to come looking for those of us who have prepared. And when that happens, all hell's going to break loose. So hopefully you guys have prepared. If you haven't, then keep watching this video because I'm going to kind of walk you through what I've done to prepare for this event and also show you some of the gear that I've stocked up on. So I've put together a whole kind of list. We're going to go through it really quick. There's a lot to get into here, but like I said, I will first kind of share with you guys my philosophy on preparedness and how I think we should all be looking at preparedness this way. Now, I will say, if you're going to prepare for one thing, I do believe it should be for an economic collapse. And I say that for basically two reasons. One, it's the most probable thing to happen. If you guys ever watched that show, Doomsday Preppers, I don't know if they still have that show, but it was a show they used to do in the early 2000s. And when they would ask the people on that show, what are you preparing for? 90% of them would always say that they were preparing for an economic collapse. I think the second most common event was like an EMP or some type of grid down situation, but that is what they prepared for. The other reason why I think you should always be preparing for an economic collapse, because preparing for an economic collapse, it really encompasses every facet of preparedness, with food storage to defense to perimeter defense, all those things, how to be fiscally responsible, different bartering techniques, etc. So I think it's a good thing to prepare for. Now, the other thing is, for those of you who are familiar with my channel, may have noticed in the opening, sometimes when I have that intro, with the Red Dawn music playing, there's a part in that intro that says, prepare, survive, sustain. And that is actually my philosophy when it comes to preparedness and how I think everybody should start. So we prepare to survive, right? And surviving is like you're putting together a stockpile of food and water, and you have your shelter and you have your firearms and your ammo. To sustain, in my mind, is to enter into it's like the next phase. So you start to enter into the realm of renewability, where those preps are, you not only have a stockpile, but you are now have kind of a sustainable, renewable thing going on. So for instance, food, I would start by getting canned food, and then you move up to 5-gallon buckets with the Mylar bags and oxygen absorbers. And that is basically your survival. It's your stockpile. The next step from there is maybe you buy some land and you get some livestock and you get chickens and things like that. And the chickens, the livestock, you get a garden going. That's the renewability. That's the sustainment. So that's kind of my philosophy. Now, I try to break down all of my lists, my inventory, into categories, and that's how we're going to be walking through this. But just kind of keep in mind that the first kind of items that I list off are really those survival items. So the stuff that you start to stockpile, and then we're going to move on to the sustainment portion. And not every category actually can evolve into sustainment, but you'd be surprised how many can. So I'm going to try to get through this as quickly as possible, because this video, there's so much ground to cover here. It could really turn into an hour to 2 hour long video, but I got to try to move through this stuff as quickly as I can. So I made a list here. Now, like I said, everything is in categories. I'm going to just start with the categories here, and then I'll kind of show you guys what I've stocked up on. First thing we have on our list here is shelter. So for me, my house is my shelter. And let's face it, if there was an economic collapse, we're all going to just be bugging in. So keep that in mind as well. This is really like a preparedness plan for sheltering in place or bugging into your house. So my house is my shelter, or maybe for you, it's a camper, it's a vehicle, it's a friend's house, family member's house, something like that. But the first thing you want to do when preparing your shelter is make sure that not only is it physically secure, right? You got motion lights, you got security cameras, gates, all that kind of stuff, but it's also financially secure, meaning you don't owe money on this thing. Is this something, if the economy collapses, that the bank is going to come in or tax collector is going to come in and just take from you, and then you're going to end up, on your butt, and and all your preps are gone. So if you can avoid that situation, try and do that. I always encourage everybody to really focus on things fiscally from a preparedness standpoint. If you can pay things off, I'm 100% for that, especially when it comes to your house. If you're going to pay anything off, try to pay that off. Now, for some of you, maybe that is just completely out of the question. You're on a 60-year mortgage or something like that. In which case, I just say, then have a backup plan. If worst case scenario, the economy tanks and you can't make those payments, and you do end up losing your house, have a plan B. If that's like a camper or a van or something that you can live in and that won't be taken from you. All right, so hopefully you guys understand that that evolution of thought here when it comes to preparedness. Now, I say this because this is actually where my preparedness plan started. I actually lost my house in the 2009 crash, and I became homeless and lost my preps, everything along with it. And it was a major wake-up call. It was terrible, but it was also a blessing in disguise. It was what put me on this path of preparedness and has made me much better off as a result today. All right, next category on our list here is heat. So we live in a colder climate, so making sure that we can stay warm in the wintertime is an extremely essential thing. This is actually one of those areas that actually doesn't really have like a survival standpoint. It just goes straight into sustainment. So if the economy tanked and I couldn't afford to pay the heating bill anymore, we would be relying solely on our wood stove as our source of heat. So that means I'm going to have the means of procuring wood and processing that firewood to keep that stove going and keep everybody warm. Now, if you are in a colder climate, or a warmer, hotter climate, then you're probably looking at AC units, such like a solar AC unit like the one I got from EcoFlow, or you're looking into geothermal cooling, which is underground cooling. I've seen people where they put pipes underground and then feed them into their house, and they can stay cool, and you're not reliant on the economy to keep the ACs running. You can just stay cool without money. So keep this in mind. These are kind of preps, and I'm trying to enter into a situation where you can sustain and keep these things going without money. So that's kind of the idea here. Next thing we have here is water storage. So first thing you want to do with water storage is just start buying the cases of bottled water. That's what I started doing. And then I evolved into the 50-gallon drums of water with the pumps and the filters. And then I started getting filtration systems. Once I had that in place, and we moved out into the county, and then we were on a well, where that kind of enters in. I mean, we still have the bottled water and some water storage, but all of our water comes from our well, and if the well wasn't working, the power went out, something like that, then we would be relying on the generator to run the well. And if we ran out of fuel for the generator, then we would be relying on the creek. So that would be kind of the evolution there, in which case we would be, having to filter all of that water. So it would definitely be tough to have to rely on the creek, but it is there, and I'm grateful that it's there. The next thing is food. So I have my prepper pantry here. Like I said, when it comes to food storage, we all start out by maybe stocking up on canned food. You buy a couple more cans of canned food when you're at the grocery store. You start getting a couple more bags of rice. Then that kind of evolves into the 5-gallon buckets with the Mylar bags and then oxygen absorbers. And then, eventually you start evolving into a renewable source like chickens or rabbits, quail, having a garden, things like that. So the other thing about food storage is you're going to want to make sure if you're stockpiling food, especially canned food, you're going to want to be cycling through it. So make sure that you're stockpiling canned food that you actually like to eat. Now, this is something that I've learned throughout the years of prepping. When I started out, I just started buying a lot of canned food that was on sale. But what I found is I just wasn't eating a lot of it. Canned food isn't the greatest for you. It's probably, not something that you should be eating on a daily basis. So make sure that when you are putting your food supply together in the form of canned food, that it's canned food that's, on the healthy side, you like to eat it, and you're going to, cycle through it in a reasonable way. So all the canned food here is stuff that actually me and my family like to eat. There's a lot of canned tuna, a lot of canned chicken, tomatoes for making sauces, things like that. There's a lot of canned fruit, but a lot of the canned food there is for like making pies and things like that. So we definitely make sure to cycle through all of this food so that none of it goes bad. Now, once you put together a good canned food supply and you got all your essentials like the flour, rice, beans in your 5-gallon buckets with Mylar bags, you might want to consider getting some freeze-dried food. Now, the upside to freeze-dried food is it has a really long shelf life. It's very shelf stable. So this can of food right here, this number 10 can, and this, I will say, if you're going to buy freeze-dried food, get it in the number 10 can. This is the best bang for your buck when it comes to freeze-dried food. The good thing about it is it has a long shelf life, which means you don't have to cycle through this. You can just buy it, put it up on a shelf, and pretty much just keep it there indefinitely until you need it. So that's one of the advantages to freeze-dried food. But as of right now, I'm really just focused on getting my garden going. So I actually put a post out not too long ago about a grow light system that I have in my house, because I will say that is like my one Achilles heel when it comes to my preparedness plan is gardening. I just do not have a green thumb. It's been really tricky. But this year, I've definitely really rethought my strategy going into a garden this year. One of the main problems is I never got the seeds into the soil soon enough because our weather here is so volatile. It's really hard to time it. So you're kind of forced to have to start your plants inside your house and then wait until it's warm enough to transfer them outside. So it's just part of the deal. The other problem that I was having, and I think this is kind of what most people do when they start getting into gardening, is they want to grow everything. They're like, I want to do corn, tomatoes, cucumbers, squash, and you try to grow too many things. And the fact is, most of those things aren't going to succeed, and you probably won't even like to eat a lot of the things that you thought you would like, and a lot of it ends up going to waste. So we've done enough gardens to know what works and what we actually like to eat. So that's what I'm doing this year. I'm just focusing on the stuff that I know works and what we actually like to eat. I can guarantee big harvests. So I'm doing away with a lot of stuff, and it's just going to be focused on about 10 different vegetables. So got everything going in the little grow shelves, the grow lights that I've created. So I'm excited for all that to work out. All right, next category on our list here is medical. So when it starts with medical, you want to start with just getting a basic IFAK or a first aid kit. So the one I have here is an example, and I only have this because we have a large family, so I bought this. And basically, if there was ever a situation where we had to bug out, I could grab this backpack, throw it in the back of our vehicle, and we would have pretty much everything that we would need to treat just about any type of injury. So this is a great bag. I can hang it up, unzip it, and the whole thing unfolds, and you can kind of access everything. Everything is nice and compartmentalized in here. But I did a video on this pack. It's just a great bag. So I would say start with an IFAK and first aid kits when you're getting into the medical portion of your preparedness plan. Next thing you want to probably get is probably some books, some good first aid books. So this is the Survival Medicine book. It's a great book, pretty much tells you how to treat every type of injury and illness in any type of like grid down situation. So great book right here. Now, for those of you who are looking to stockpile medications, the only company that I know of that allows you to actually buy medications, they'll prescribe it to you. I mean, legitimate human grade prescriptions is Jace Medical. So I got this Jace Medical kit. Pretty much has every antibiotic you could need to treat any type of infection in here. But I'll make sure to leave a link in the description for this kit along with a discount code. Now, for those of you who might have conditions there where you are dependent on certain medications, all I can say is that maybe you can ask your doctor to kind of give you a stockpile or something like that. But I can relate with that because when I started out my preparedness journey in 2011, I actually was suffering from a pretty major medical condition, and I was reliant on a prescription drug to help me out with that condition. And I remember thinking, while I was preparing, like, gosh, this isn't a good situation because if we ever end up in another economic collapse or something, I can't afford this medication. I'm going to be in bad shape. So that just wasn't a good situation for me. So I started looking for like an alternative way, like an alternative medicine, to treat this illness that I had. And what I ended up finding was actually almost like, I don't want to say cure, although for me, it actually was a cure, did take away all of the symptoms and what was going on with me, but it had mostly to do with just a diet. So I changed my diet and I was able to get off this medication, which put me in a much better place from a preparedness standpoint. So I would say for those of you, maybe you have conditions that could be treated holistically, or you can solve these things through your diet. I would say, definitely look into that. Because you don't want to end up in a situation if you can help it, where you're dependent on a prescription drug. So look into, a different natural, holistic alternatives to whatever conditions you guys might be facing. All right, so next category is defensive strategies, and all of the supplies that go along with that. So we'll go ahead and talk about ammo storage. So make sure that you have all of the ammo that you need for all the different caliber weapons that you own. Right here, we got a box of 22 ammo. Now, as far as entering into like a realm of renewability or sustainability with ammo, I think you end up running into some issues here. You could do reloading, but even if you're doing reloading, that has its obstacles as far as like primers. I mean, there's certain things that you're just not going to be able to produce yourself, or like powders, things like that. But when it comes to 22, I would say you could probably, buy enough of this stuff to last you a lifetime. 5.56 on the other hand, that might be a little more difficult to do financially, but if you have the budget, hey, buy a lifetime supply of 5.56. But I will say definitely now is the time to get this, because if any of these wars pop off, you're going to see a run on ammo and all firearm related accessories. So stock up on ammo, make sure, stock up on the 30 round mags. These not only are easy to get right now, but you can even find these on sale. And I guarantee you, if there's ever another ammo shortage or, gun panic buying, you're not only not gonna be able to find these, but you're definitely not gonna find them on sale. So you want to stock up on this stuff now. The other thing you want to consider getting is some non-lethal forms of defense. So we got some pepper spray here. This is by Palm Industries. They are an American company. All this stuff, all these products are made in America. So really good stuff. I have like a canister of mace in all of my get home bags, my bug out bags, and my wife has a lot of this stuff in her purse as well. So really good product there. Next thing you want to probably look into, if you haven't done so already, is making sure that you have some type of EDC carry. So right here we just have my HK USP. This is chambered in 40 cal. So this is actually the handgun that I bring with me when I go hunting or I go out in the woods exploring. So great defensive weapon here. My EDC pistol that I actually carry with me, it's part of my EDC kit, is this M&P Shield. This is chambered in 9mm, and I got this laser light combo. This is the TLR6. So great, slim, perfect, comfortable concealed carry weapon right here. Now, the other thing we're going to be taking a look at is an AR-15. So this is my main defensive weapon when it comes to defending my home. So a lot of you are probably familiar with this. Now, if you live in a free country, a free state, you can purchase one of these. And if you're on the fence about purchasing one of these, I would say definitely pull the trigger now, no pun intended. But this is a critical part of home defense, especially if SHTF happens. You're going to need a proper weapon to defend yourself. So the one thing I would recommend if you're going to get into a platform like this is just do it yourself. These are actually pretty easy to put together. There are a lot of videos, even on YouTube, that you can watch, and they'll kind of show you step by step on how to put these rifles together. But they're really basic. They're just comprised of some basic moving parts. You got your stock here, your buffer tube. You have your upper receiver, your lower receiver, your grip, your barrel, and your muzzle brake. And then you have your optic. And then, of course, you have your trigger assembly and your bolt carrier group inside. So believe it or not, these are really easy to put together, and I would strongly suggest that you do so, because one, you're going to learn how this weapon functions. You're going to learn how to take it apart, put it back together when you clean it, and you're going to need to know how to do all that stuff to make basic repairs and do maintenance on this weapon. So that's what I'd say. There's a lot of good companies out that basically supply all of the parts for here. You can pretty much order everything on this weapon online and have it shipped straight to your house, except for the lower receiver. The lower receiver is actually the only part of this weapon that is commerced, and you do have to get a federal background check for that. So now's the time. If you haven't done so already, you haven't gotten yourself some type of defensive rifle, I'd say, go ahead and do that now. Next thing we're looking at as far as defense, you want to make sure that you have good defensive perimeters around your home. So that means having good security cameras, good security lights. I actually just bought a security light, which I'm going to be installing this weekend, hopefully. This is a really good, low budget, high quality security light. Make sure to leave links in the description, but let's see. I want to say too, if I haven't said so already, all of the products that I recommend, these are products that are not only budget friendly, but I have thoroughly researched these things, made sure that I'm getting, the best bang for my buck, so to speak. So keep that in mind. Also, when it comes to the security cameras, at least the ones I use and the ones that I'm going to recommend in my video description, they're great cameras. They basically have all of the security features that you want in a security camera, like notifications of movement that goes directly to your phone. But they're 4K. They're really good visual cameras. They have night vision, all that stuff, and you can get these cameras for pretty cheap and just hook them up yourself. The only downside to a lot of these cameras is they do have a tendency of being a little difficult to set up. So for those of you who might go ahead and buy the cameras that I recommend, if you have issues with that, just let me know in the comment section. I've kind of learned some different tips and tricks for how to set those up. And the last part of your defensive strategy, I'd say, just when it comes to your home, just make sure that you have kind of developed and you have established different defensive points of your house. So you got to make sure that you know the weak points, how your house can be penetrated and where it's vulnerable, but take care of that stuff now. If there are, areas of your house that you can't see, that would be easily accessible, put cameras there, put motion sensor lights there, and just make sure that you have a good plan in place for defending your home. That also means, as far as other things you might want to consider stockpiling to defend your home or even your business, would be plywood. I remember during the riots, plywood was one of those things that was really hard to come by, and even if you did come by it, it was extremely expensive. So right now you can get like a 4x8 sheet of OSB for under $23. So get some plywood. It's good for doing repairs, making projects, things like that, but even more importantly, boarding up windows and things like that. So see, moving on is we have currency. So this is one of those things that's commonly overlooked. You always want to make sure that you have cash on hand. So don't have all of your cash in the bank. Make sure, if there's ever a run on the banks, it's probably something that's going to happen during an economic collapse, that you have cash on hand. Also, you want to probably keep some alternative means of currency like precious metals. So make sure that you have cash on hand and that you have some alternative means of money. The other thing you look into is bartering, because I believe that if our economy was ever to tank, that our kind of default monetary system, at least in the beginning, would be some form of bartering. So, and the things that I think will be the most sought after in a situation like that are going to be food, water, and bullets. So people are going to be concerned with, eating, drinking, and defending themselves. I know a lot of people talk about having some alcohol and tobacco. I mean, that might be a good thing to have. I don't know how many people are going to be wanting to get drunk and have a smoke when things are bad. I'm sure there's probably going to be a lot, but I think most people are just going to be concerned with their life. But if you want to do that, go ahead, keep some alcohol and tobacco on hand. I will say that, it does make sense to have some vodka, something like that. And I've been considering doing this, keeping like a bottle of vodka or alcohol or something, just as a kind of an alternative to anesthesia or some sort. So if you ended up, with a bad injury and you weren't able to get access to a doctor, maybe somebody could do those stitches. You could use the alcohol as a means of necessitizing yourself. Now, I'm not a medical expert. I'm not saying you should do this, but hey, we're just speculating here. This is like total hypothetical stuff, but it is an option to explore. Next thing we have here is communication. So if the economy tanks or the grid goes down and our cell phone towers go down, you're going to be looking at alternative means of communication, which means you're going to be looking at ham radios, things like that. So make sure that you have some two-way radios. These are Baofeng GMRS radios, real affordable, easy to use radios. Has the NOAA frequency, so you can get the weather and all that. You also want to invest in some type of scanner so you can keep tabs on all the emergency situations that are going on around you. Also wanted to probably get a good shortwave radio as well. So give you an example of a good shortwave radio. This is a C Crane shortwave radio, and it's got the little hand crank here, so you can keep this charged even without batteries. So yeah, so that's kind of one way to always look at communication. It's not only just to transmit, but to also receive. So get a good scanner. Having a good scanner is definitely a must, especially in any type of emergency situation. All right, so moving on, we have energy. So for me, the first thing I need to do when it comes to energy is make sure that I have enough fuel, like gasoline and diesel, to keep our vehicles running. If there's ever an economic downturn, you got to make sure that I always have fuel on hand, because if things got really bad, there would be a run on gasoline. The gas stations would just become full of people. It'd probably be a really hostile situation you wouldn't want to be in. So one, I'd say, just always make sure that your gas tanks are filled, and you have a good decent storage of gas on hand in case you have to get from point A. You do have to bug out. You got to get to your bug out location. You don't want to be making stops at the gas station, especially if there's like a run and things are getting dicey at the gas station. So having the ability to get from point A to point B without having to stop at the gas station is huge. Also, if you're sheltering in place, just make sure that you have the gasoline to run your generators and things to keep your power going. Now, if the situation were to escalate and it went on for a long period of time, then you're going to start looking into renewable sources of energy, which means you're going to be looking at solar panels and solar generators. So probably one of the best solar generators that you can buy is EcoFlow. Now, if you're just getting into it and you just want like a solar generator to charge your cell phone and some radios, something like that, there is the Pecron. It's a 600 watt generator, and it's the one that I actually always take camping with me. But it's a great generator just to kind of keep flashlights recharged and your cell phone recharged. So okay, so that pretty much does it for energy. So next thing on our list here is transportation. And for most of us, that just means our vehicles. So make sure that your vehicles are in good running orders. The oil's been changed, all the fluids are changed. I keep some extra parts on hand. I always keep extra oil so I can do an oil change. So it's a good idea to just kind of keep some basic supplies for doing basic automotive maintenance. So keep some extra oil on hand, air filters, things like that. Now, as far as going into like a sustainable realm with transportation, if there was no more fuel, my next option would actually be an e-bike. So I actually had a company that reached out to me recently about sending me an e-bike and doing a video on it, and I took them up on it. So that's going to be coming out this spring, and I'm going to be doing a video on that e-bike. So I'm really excited for that. I'm going to really just be approaching that bike and doing that video from a preparedness standpoint. So I really want to see if this bike can actually get me from where we live to our grocery store and pick up some basic supplies and bring them back on a full charge. Because if that works, then I have a renewable source of transportation in the sense that I can just recharge that bike from my solar generator. So be interested to see how that actually works as a renewable transportation source. So keep an eye out for that video. But that pretty much does it for transportation. And the last thing we have on our list here is entertainment. So just because it's last on the list doesn't mean it's not an important thing. It's probably the least important thing in terms of this list goes, but it is, keeping your mind occupied, especially during a high stress situation, is going to be critical. It's, most survival situations, it's people's minds. It's, that your state of mind is what takes most people out. So make sure, that you have a means of keeping your mind occupied, keeping yourself entertained, keeping spirits and morale up when things are down. So if the economy is really in bad and we can't afford to keep the power and lights on, you're going to need a means of kind of keeping yourself and your family entertained during that time. So make sure you're stocked up on books and board games, reading material, things like that. So that's going to do it for me today, you guys. I hope you enjoyed the video. Hopefully that wasn't too long. We covered a lot of stuff, I realized. But if you haven't done so already, please make sure to hit that thumbs up button and subscribe to my channel. And if you have any questions for me, go ahead and leave them in the comment section. Also, if you're interested in any of the gear that you saw in today's video, I'll make sure to leave links in the description. Also, if you want to see more videos like this, go ahead and hit that notification bell. So, with that said, until the next time, stay prepared.